What was your reaction when they greenlit this? When they gave you the keys to the kingdom and said, go nuts. You can have all the characters you want.
It was like, really? It was like, you're really letting us do this? This is insane. And you don't need to see a script. And it honestly, it was also, not to get sort of sentimental about it, but it was very humbling because here's a studio and network that obviously we have a 4-year-long relationship with, and they really showed an incredible amount of faith in us. The amount of money that they are putting towards this, just to get the cast assembled, it's unprecedented, and we're very, very fortunate that that they have the faith in us that we think the audience has.
Almost every fanboy has longed for a Justice League TV show in their lifetime. Was your inner trial just like, holy crap, I've got a DC super team show?
I wrote a line the other day for Ray. I'm not sure if it'll end up in a cut or anything, but I wrote a line for Ray that 10-year-old me is having a moment, and I'm like, that pretty much just came from me. I mean, this 10-year-old me can't believe this. It's insane, and it's so great. It is literally a dream come true. Just to see, it would be a dream come true for me just to be watching the show.
Was it always the idea to have a super team, or were we ever toying with the idea of just the Atom Show or White Canary or whatever you wanted to do?
We had been talking originally about doing a different kind of spin-off than a team show, and I think the thing that we were sort of figuring out is like, what's really great about Flash is it introduced superpowers and visual effects, to the Berlantiverse, and it built on Arrow. What could we do that would actually build on Flash? And another single hero probably wasn't going to get it done. But when we sort of looked at the landscape and realized how many characters have been introduced on both shows that can actually carry their own show, we realized, oh, wait a minute, what would really be cool, but they'll never let us do it, is a team-up show. And then to our shock and amazement, they actually let us do it. It's crazy.
Well, with the character,
it is bonkers. It's completely insane, and it's like, part of the problem with breaking the stories for the show is we'll get together and every 5 minutes we're just saying how crazy insane it is, and then we've got to we lose 5 minutes talking about how insane it is before we come back to doing the actual work.
Well, a character like Vandal Savage, I think you could draw some parallels between him and then Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
How are you going to sort of separate those two so they don't end up too much in that same villainy space, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, actually, because the truth is, like, Vandal and Ra's, I think, share a common, comic book DNA. It's hard for me to answer that question fully without knowing who we're casting yet for Vandal. Part of it's just the way you write Vandal. I think Vandal's aspirations are very, very different from Raz's, and that's probably like the biggest thing is that our Raz sort of, his only aspiration really was to try to find a successor because he knew that his life, was going to come to a close. Vandal's aspiration is nothing smaller than taking over the entire world. So they're very different. They're different men, even though they feel like they're cut from a similar cloth.
I got chills from that.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Take over the world.
Speaking of team-ups, what pairing of two characters will surprise us?
Right now, I think the thing that we're having a lot of fun with is getting Palmer and Snark together, and their interactions. That's a lot of fun. And actually, Palmer and Stein's, we have a fun little surprise for Palmer and Stein's interactions that's inspired by the comic book.
Is there something coming up in the season, early in the season or whatever, that you can't wait for the fans to see, that a moment, a development?
Yeah, actually, there's a moment. Well, certainly, I guess there's two things. Certainly in the first hour, it's I think seeing all these characters together is part of the cachet of the show, and I'm really looking forward to the first time the team is assembled on camera in action together. Then there's a moment in the second hour that is pretty amazing that I'm really looking forward to fans seeing, but I'm going to be very vague about it.
I would be surprised if there wasn't a second season. Will the team be different then if that happened?
We've certainly talked about it. We've talked about like how we want each arc of the show to feel like its own movie, and that it's obviously not an anthology in the traditional sense, but that each arc has its own identity. So that's certainly something that we've talked about.
So it's possible some cast members have only signed on for 1 year.
Well, I'm not getting into the deals of the cast members, but what's really great is that Arrow and Flash are continuing to introduce new characters, and every time they introduce a new character, that's a potential new teammate or antagonist or presence on Legends of Tomorrow. That's part of the fun.
Is there too much? Is there a risk at all, do you think, now, the way that Arrow kind of spun Flash and this Legends of Tomorrow, that's Supergirl, and not that you guys are connected with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Daredevil, and all that. Is there a risk that there's just too many of these shows and it's going to be soon?
It's a great question. I don't look at it in terms of there being a risk of too many shows. I just, pop culture is old enough that it doesn't take a brain surgeon to realize that every genre has their moment. A few years ago, procedurals were all the rage. When I came up on Law & Order, every network had a gajillion procedurals. Then it was, for back in the '80s, it was every network had their primetime soap. Right now, superheroes are having a wonderful moment, but no student of pop culture is ever going to tell you that moment lasts forever. But any student of pop culture will also tell you that when the moment's over, it's not because there were too many. It's not because the golden goose got killed. It's just because, the moment passed. And I think the main thing is making sure that all of these shows are as high quality as possible. But I don't think, the assumption behind that question is that the audience would just stop watching all of them all at once because they got overwhelmed. And we all know, just again, from just knowing the history of our medium, that doesn't happen.
You've probably heard this question before, but with DC, one of its pluses, its distinctions, is the fact that there's a multiverse. Mm-hmm. Fans love speculating. Well, is it possible that one day a TV universe could exist parallel to a movie universe and cross over, something like that? Is that something that as a fan yourself you would like to see at some point, or and if not, is it just a trip to have the cool distinction of having a team that's neither heroes like Justice League or villains like Suicide Squad, but both?
I tell you, my fanboy dream. It's funny. I really had two fanboy dreams. One was that I would see Dark Knight Returns on the big screen, and I feel like I'm very close to getting at least a good chunk of that. I'm certainly getting Dark Knight Falls on the big screen. And my second dream was to see Crisis on Infinite Earths done on the big screen. Certainly possible, I'd love to see it, and those sorts of things are made so far above my head that I just look at it as something as a fan I'd love to see.